Greetings, folks, and welcome to today's show. The Tennessee legislative session has just ended, and as has been our custom for several years, we have Judd Matheny on to tell us what happened. And so, Judd, thanks for taking time to join us.
Proud to be here.
And
Absolutely.
you have, how long you been up there?
14 years.
14, and going for 2 more.
Going for 2 more.
Have a little opposition this year.
Sure.
Right? Okay. Well, last fall, when we, if you remember, folks, we usually have Judd on before the session begins, and they were going to deal with refugees and transportation and states' rights and the college boards and all that sort of thing. So we will find out today how much of that they got done. So anything in particular bugging you this year?
Well, I think you nailed it. We'll come back after the break and talk about the issues you highlighted. Most of the issues we put to rest that we started, and I think it was a good year for conservatives eventually. We don't know what the governor's going to do with his veto power. There's about 4 or 5 bills that he's got in his crosshairs to potentially veto that we passed in the last couple weeks of session. We'll talk about those. They're almost all.
Well, he only has 10 days to decide, doesn't he?
Well, that's after the 2 speakers of the House engross the bill and send it to him. Then he has 10 business days. So really, those 10 business days won't be up until about the 21st or 22nd of May. So he's still got some time.
Oh, okay. Well, with that, folks, let's take a short commercial break, and we'll see what happened.
All I have to do to think about what I was physically before and what I am now, and I don't ever want to go back to that original situation.
The overall mission of the rehab team is always what is best for the patient and how we can facilitate maximum potential from every resident.
Well, the most important thing to me is that I'm allowed to do whatever I want to do, you know.
Everyday miracles at Life Care Center of Tullahoma.
Tired of paying for monthly telephone service, expensive long-distance bills, and all those crazy taxes? Are you sick of spending money on telephone equipment, maintenance contracts, and service calls, all for a phone system that shackles you to 100-year-old technology and your desk? Stop it. It's time to ship your phone system to the cloud. What can the cloud do for you? Bring together remote offices, workers, and employees in the field. Make sure that you'll never miss calls by delivering them to multiple devices. Modernize faxing by allowing multiple faxes to be sent and received at once and delivered to email. Get your voicemail messages instantly through email too. And take advantage of an endless supply of customizable features. Host My Calls can deliver the cloud. All of this technology with low upfront costs and not 1 penny in capital expense. It's time for a phone solution you'll truly love from Host My Calls. Call the number below.
We're talking today, folks, with Representative Judd Matheny, and our mission is to find out what the legislature was up to this year. So, Judd, let's, well, there are 3 or 4 items that we could sort of summarize and get out of the way, I think, without much discussion. The budget passed, close to $35 billion, no new taxes, maybe a reduction in an area or 2.
Yes, sir. If the legislature did pass a full repeal of the Hall income tax on the first to the last day of session last Thursday, and
full repeal.
Full repeal. It's staged out over 6 years at 17% a year for 6 years till it's fully staged out. The governor does want to veto that bill, and we'll just have to see if he vetoes it or not. And we won't be able to override the veto because we don't have a mechanism to do that since we've already adjourned for the year. And but if that continues, if he doesn't veto it, then it will be the largest tax decrease in Tennessee's history. And it's one that it makes us fully income tax free, And when we have such large budget surpluses, we thought there's not a better time than now to finally cut this tax back. And it sets us up to be really the greatest state in the union for retirees to come to, because it does away with all income taxes on investment incomes. We have no inheritance tax. We have no gift tax any longer.
Okay.
So this is the state to park your wealth in. And as conservatives know, creating more wealth creates more government revenue. Giving tax incentives and allowing people to do more with their money actually generates more revenue.
And you like creating wealth by having retirees move to Tennessee?
Absolutely.
Huh? Okay.
A lot of wealth there.
And you tried to make the Bible the official Tennessee book, and I think that's one he overrode, right?
Well, yes, he vetoed it.
Right, vetoed it, right.
We did not have the votes in the House to override the veto. We had 8 people change their vote from voting for it to deferring to the governor's position to not override, and the Senate didn't have to take it up because the House couldn't pass it.
So that was off this year at least. An official rifle, how did that go? You had the Barrett M82 sniper was up for something.
That's correct. It was a resolution that was passed to make it the official rifle of the state of Tennessee. And it's not that another rifle can never be the official rifle. We have 11 official state songs, so we're almost an album now. But the rifle was just to show homage to the Barrett family and what they've done for national defense, and they are one of only 3 armories in the country now that service United States military, and it's a big deal. And they.
Where are they?
What are the armories?
Where are they?
They're in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Oh yeah, no, I was thinking about Barrett. Where are they?
In Murfreesboro.
They are?
Yes,
yeah?
sir. They're
okay.
between actually Manchester and Murfreesboro, about halfway between the two.
I missed that one. All right. Well, okay. Also, there's some comment about a session every other September, which sounds kind of strange. What was that?
Well, this was sort of looking at a veto override session, or some way that, and it would be every other September. Basically, if we adjourn and the governor decides to veto the bills that the legislature passed overwhelmingly, we needed a mechanism to come back and override those vetoes. And so that was the talk about a veto override session.
Another session.
Just a statutory time and date certain when we would go in. It's already built into the budget. This wouldn't cost any additional money, because already built into the budget are 90 legislative days a year. And like this year, we only used 90 legislative days every 2 years, and we only used 84. The past 2 years, I think we used 81, the 2 years before that. So the chance of going over that 90 days would be very slim. So it would already be built into the budget, salaries, per diems, et cetera.
All right. And states' rights, you were going to have, what was your states' rights?
Tried to have a bilateral session, and we just couldn't get the entire House voted for a bilateral session, which is to bring our federal legislators down.
Right.
And we could only get two representatives. The entire state House could only get 2 federal legislators to agree to come, and that was Congressman DesJarlais and Congressman Steve Cohen. Congressman Phil Rowe and wanted to come. Diane Black was adamantly opposed to it. And most other congressmen, both of our U.S. senators, were adamantly opposed to coming and meeting with the state legislature. Now that would get, if Mayor Board and Alderman asked me to come and speak to them and I gave them the finger, wouldn't bode so well. So I don't think it will bode too well for them in the future either.
All right. College boards, where the governor wanted to set up an independent board for each of the state universities, 6 of them. And that one passed.
It did.
And he already signed it, I believe.
And I was one of the few that voted against it. And the main reason I voted against it was due to counsel I received from a gentleman named John Morgan, who was the head of the Board of Regents, and he was a former comptroller of the Treasury. And I agreed with his philosophy that creating separate boards and commissions, or separate boards for each and every college, is in complete dichotomy of what we've tried to do for the last 8 years in Tennessee, which is streamline all of our colleges and universities so that we have seamless transition of credits from our technology centers and our community colleges into our 4-year institutions. And now that whole thing has been upset, Number one, I think it's a great disrespect to the community colleges and the education professionals in Tennessee by saying for 8 years you must do this, you must do this, you must do this, and then arbitrarily 1 year saying, but now we're going to turn it all over and allow each of you to operate independently and create your own revenue and basically create 6 or 7 different fiefdoms from one. So it totally flies in the face of the Complete College Act that Haslam actually pushed for the first 7 years he was in office.
So that's one you were opposed to.
Yes.
But it has become law. All right. Well, let's begin with some of the things that you got worked on. You've already mentioned one thing. Let's talk about infrastructure. And the biggest infrastructure problem we have, as far as I'm aware, is in the roads and bridges area, which is mostly funded by the gasoline tax. And so you came up with some money there, right?
Yes, sir. We came up with a pretty good chunk of money this year. We put a large amount back into TDOT to begin repaying them for what Medicaid expansion cost 10 years ago, which really kind of broke the back of TDOT. It made the state went from being a proactive construction state to being almost a maintenance-only state with very few new projects. And once again, Medicaid expansion did that. A runaway explosive program, which is the same reason we didn't pass it last year, is because it needs more controls on it. The state legislature needs more controls on these burgeoning federal programs in order to, when times get lean, we can make the programs lean. But if the federal government dictates all the parameters, we can't do that. So I'm going a little further than your question, but I'm giving you a strong...
Yeah, simplify that for us.
Bottom line is, if we can't control the costs for program in the state of Tennessee, then why
control the cost.
Control the cost, right, which we can't under Medicaid expansion, because when we take federal money, we have to do things by the federal rules and regulations, not by state rules and regulations. And that's what cost us so dearly in the middle of, from between 2005 and 2008. It broke the back of TDOT and many other state agencies. 100% of revenue was rated from all the reserve funds to pay for TennCare when it exploded. And TDOT had the largest reserves at the time. And they had great authority and great opportunity to build new roads and do new planning, and every county and region had strategic projects that were being funded. Well, all that stopped, and it's taken us 10 years now to rebuild enough surplus revenue that we can start paying that back. And we're fortunate that our sales tax is driving such a strong budget in Tennessee. And so
You're talking about the general sales tax,
the general
not the
sales
gas
tax. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're second or third most prosperous state in the country by all measures.
What's the big hang-up on doing something with the gas tax? You haven't increased that in what, 10 years or more, 15?
The big hang-up is that confidence in government is at an all-time low, and when we have $1 billion surplus like we do right now, it's very difficult for me as a legislator to sell to my constituents the fact that we need even more money.
$1 billion in the general budget, not in the...
in the general budget, that's correct.
Not in the road budget.
Not in the road budget. Now, we have to be more... If you look at the history of road taxes, they're never going to keep up with our expenses the way we're growing. So we have to think of something new. And myself and other legislators, especially a gentleman named Brian Terry out of Murfreesboro, are doing something very similar to what I did to the State Unemployment Insurance Fund 6 years ago, which has made it the strongest in the nation now. And that has put triggers in place that when we have certain budget surpluses, certain monies automatically go to dedicated funds instead of pet projects like state museums and things of that nature. So that way there's always predictability whenever there's surpluses that these projects and programs are going to get more money, and it's not up to the whim.
What happens if you don't run a surplus and you run a negative instead?
Then there would potentially be an automatic gas tax increase. And 1 cent equals $30 million on the gas tax. So there's some creative thinking going on other than just the simple, let's put more money in it and move on.
Okay. Well, as always, the question which we'll wait till we come back from the short commercial break, folks, and take up some more.
It's time for every family and business in Tullahoma to go green and recycle. Tullahoma Public Works makes it simple and easy to recycle. Just place your recyclable materials, paper, plastic, aluminum, and cardboard beside your garbage container on the same day your garbage is picked up. Your recycled materials don't have to be in a fancy container. Recycling is not only the right thing to do, it makes sense. Recycling pays. Paying to bury our garbage costs each of us. Please do your part. Let's go green, Tullahoma, and recycle.
It's your trademark. That's something special everyone knows and remembers. It's your thing. It's made holidays special for decades and summers unforgettable for the entire neighborhood. It's made everyone laugh every single time. Don't let illness or injury keep you from doing your thing. The rehab team at Life Care Center of Tullahoma is ready to help you live well.
I'm meteorologist Leland Statham from the News Channel 5 Weather Center. Look to Jim Fuller and crew for local news night here on Channel 6.
We're back, folks, and we're talking today with Judd Matheny to catch up on the legislative session which just ended. And no new gas tax. But there is money coming into the road business, if we simplify it, right?
Yes, and we passed a large repayment back to TDOT, and we also passed $1 million to each county. Is going to go to the, so our county road projects will get a $1 million one-time shot grant this year, non-recurring.
Right, yeah.
Well, it's going to be passed on to local municipalities too. It comes into the county and will be split up. So
okay.
That was $100 million.
Well, let's talk about another subject which the legislature is almost has an obsession about, and that is they got to do something about guns in every session. So where does that stand this year? I know it was introduced to allow guns by, I guess, employees on the state colleges and universities.
Yes, we made a lot of good fronts in the Second Amendment this year, which most conservatives in the General Assembly agree that the Second Amendment is for law-abiding citizens, and that people need to be allowed the opportunity to prove that they're a law-abiding citizen before their Second Amendment is quelled. And we made some good progress this year. We're allowing independent or allowing school districts to be able to set up their own programs to arm individuals within the classroom. And we set some.
Which says they don't have to set up.
They don't have to, but if they do, they go through 40 hours a year of instruction that individual does, as well as 40 hours of initial instruction and 16 hours a year of new instruction, and that's as much or more than law enforcement gets. We also passed a law this year that allows employees of higher education institutions to be able to carry weapons on campus if they have permit. Employees, not students, because we realize that a handgun permit is 21 years old and most students are not going to have those. We are allowing young men and women in the military that are under 21 to be able to get their handgun permit now. So if an 18 or 19-year-old that is active duty military or in the Reserve or National Guard can now get their permit under the age of 21. Of course, they've been through much more training than law enforcement or civilians ever would by that point anyway.
But it's still employees you're talking about, not
well,
students.
I'm talking about the vast gamut of laws we passed. But yes, employees of higher education institutions can carry now. Local education agencies can come up with their own program if they choose to. They can opt in or opt out. We also streamline.
Local meaning all the way down to the Tullahoma School Board?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We also passed a law that streamlines the handgun carry permit process, and basically you can get a lifetime permit now for under $300. That includes background checks conducted every 4 years by the Department of Safety. They have amassed more than $18 million in surplus monies in the handgun carry permit program, so we've drastically cut the fees. We've increased the amount of time that you can apply for your handgun permit, your carry permit after you take your training, from 6 months to a year. We've increased the renewal from 6 years to 8 years, so now a permit is good for 8 years once you renew it now. Once again, background checks are automatically done every 4 years. We reduced the cost of lifetime permits for retired law enforcement officers. It's now just $100 for a retired law enforcement officer to be able to get a lifetime handgun permit, provided that they retired in good standing and are citizens of this state.
But there's not a general requirement for background checks that would cover, for example, online sales or gun shows. So you could buy, in fact, one of your legislators brought in a rapid fire gun, which he bought online.
It was a rifle, yeah.
A rifle he bought online for cash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do that a lot.
No record of any kind.
Well,
and no background check.
Not on a private purchase. Now, if he bought it from a gun dealer, it would have to. Law
What's wrong with the background? What's wrong with the private purchase?
Private purchase is an individual right. I mean, it's a right to be able to conduct commerce with someone else, and it doesn't mean that you're doing it for nefarious purposes. It just means you're conducting commerce. It would be the exact same thing if you wanted to buy a car from your neighbor, but instead of you being able to buy it from your neighbor, you had to go to a dealership.
Well,
and pay.
there's a little difference between a car and an automatic rifle.
It's semi-automatic rifle, and cars kill many, many more people than guns. A car is a 4,000-pound bullet.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, let's talk. Let's see. One other thing that has passed that I don't recall seeing, but I imagine you were in favor of, and that was setting up TUB as an independent utility?
Yes, sir. I carried the legislation and was very much in favor of it. And
right.
It hit a few hiccups from AT&T and Charter Cable and some of these other folks simply because they're trying to squash competition. They don't want, TUB is a very successful business model, provides wonderful customer service, and they want to be able to keep that as contained as possible. And they saw the advent of a Telehome Utility Authority, which is basically it allows Telehome Utility Board to contract their own debt and to keep their own records more without burdening the city with their strategic plans. But at the same time, the city maintains strategic control over TUB by appointing the board of directors, and an alderman will stay on the board of directors, and it gives much more autonomy to TUB to be able to borrow money and spend money on its own projects without, and it creates more potential debt ceiling for the city should they decide to use it. We did get it passed.
Yeah, by that, what's happening, folks, is that the TUB bond requirements that are presently in the city budget will be transferred directly to TUB, taken off of the city's roster, and that's $13–14 million, I recall.
Yes, sir.
Would come off of the city budget and go directly on the TUB.
And this is happening with more. There's more and more utility
4 or 5 of them in the state already.
And they're increasing. We also we passed a law, home rule law, that allows some cities to do it a little bit easier too, in conjunction with this. So TUB did a great job. Brian Skelton and Brian Coate and all the group over there did a great job supporting us in negotiating the bill against potential enemies, and they were very kind and generous in acquiescing some things to make everybody feel more comfortable. And the bottom line is we still can't go out of our footprint to provide broadband services unless there's a change in general state law.
Right. And what he's talking about there, folks, is that there is a state law that doesn't allow a service provider like TUB.
And there's 7 of those in the state.
Right.
There's 7 municipally owned fiber systems.
Yeah, and the question is being allow them to go out of their city limit, which is what the state law is now. That's come up several times in the legislature, and it always gets voted down. The commercial outfits, the charters and the AT&Ts of the world are always in opposition to that, and so far they've been successful. Is that ever going to change?
I think so. I think the change is coming very soon. The Economic Community Development Commission in Tennessee has put together a huge study and survey that is, the results are due July 1st of this year. And they've surveyed over 20,000 businesses and individuals around the state. And they're basically looking at what kind of headroom is available for broadband expansion into the rural areas, what kind of capital investment headroom is out there, what kind of lending resources are available, what the actual need is, the business practices and intents of existing businesses that are in place. And for the first time, we're not going to just have he said, she said, hearsay information in committee. We're going to have hard data from businesses and consumers statewide, in rural areas and metropolitan areas, from carriers, and we're going to get a good snapshot to see if this multi-billion-dollar problem in Tennessee has the capacity to fix itself in the free market, or is there going to have to be some type of change in state law to allow municipally owned fiber systems and others to be able to expand.
Okay. Well, guess what, folks? As we usually do, we run out of time, and we've got some other things we could talk about, but we'll have to defer that. So let's take a short commercial break, and we'll wrap up.
The Russell Barnett Automotive family is the largest automotive retailer in southern Middle Tennessee. With over 1,200 vehicles to choose from, we are your one-stop shop. Check out our awesome website, russellbarnett.com. There's over 1,200 vehicles to choose from. Stop by one of our 5 locations. That's Russell Barnett Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, Chevrolet GMC, and Ford of Winchester, or Russell Barnett Ford and Kia of Tullahoma. And remember, why buy anywhere else?
Get your news first, fast, and free with your news leader on 6 every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday nights at 6, 8, and 10 p.m. Local weather, sports, community calendar events, and a comprehensive look at the latest news stories and news makers as only a video news broadcast can do. Get it first, fast, and free with News Leader on Channel 6, your local information network.
We've been talking today, folks, with Representative Judd Matheny, who has some political opposition this year, and we've talked about all the things that the legislature was able to accomplish or may have been frustrated on. So, Judd, you got a quick minute you want to deal directly with the folks?
Yes, I want to talk about the refugee resettlement lawsuit, and many people in this district have followed that very closely. The state of Tennessee did pass overwhelmingly, I believe it was 28-7 in the Senate and 69 or 71 to 20-something in the House, to ask the state of Tennessee to sue the federal government on a 10th Amendment violation over the refugee resettlement issue. Basically, the federal government is resettling over 2,000 refugees a year in Tennessee without our say-so, and we're picking up the vast majority of the cost of that, which is compounding annually. And should the state government choose not to do it, which we're confident they won't due to comments already made by our Attorney General and our Governor, then it empowers the Thomas More Law Center to sue on our behalf as the prosecutor, and as long as more than 50% of each body maintains its position on the lawsuit, then we maintain our standing, and we're well above 50%. We're at 66+%
okay.
in each body.
10th Amendment issue, so we'll have to ask you to go find the Constitution and figure out what that is, folks.
States' rights.
States' rights. Judd, thanks very much for taking time to join us, and we thank you folks for inviting us into your parlor, and I'm off to Special Olympics, and we'll see you next time.